Hey folks, so I wanted to offer a video lecture here. I had two questions come up real early in class, and I wanted to kind of hold on to them. I'm going to go through them right now and respond to them. So one of the questions was how to narrow down your research interests. The person asking said a lot of broad topic interests, but having trouble picking one thing to write about since there's so many potential options and paths to go down. Any tips on narrowing things down? Yeah, I think you start with a big idea, whatever that is. So, like for me, when I was trying to figure out my dissertation research, the first real research I had done, I wanted to study gamers. That's huge. So you have to think about how you can funnel it down to a specific topic area. One of my professors used to talk about the idea of think about something mechanical. He had used a fountain that was in in the space outside the building where we were doing our counseling classes, and he talked about like you want to write a study on fountains. Here's a fountain. As we think about like what we want to write in our article, there's so many pieces to a fountain. Like we could talk about water and like what kind of water is best to put in a fountain. We could talk about the mechanism that spouts the water out and that system. Like if you go under the surface, there's an entire series of mechanical issues that are going on under the fountain that could be problematic. You could write about the motors. You could write about the pumping system. You could write about, the brickwork that goes around the fountain. You could write like all of these are fountain, but it's something specific. So I think like for myself, when I was studying gaming, I had to ask myself, what do I think is the most important? What have other people talked about so far? At the time when I started, there was a lot of talk about aggression and violence in gaming. And I wanted to touch on that, but I felt like maybe that was covered a lot and maybe there was something that was missing. And so what I got to was looking into community because for me, when I'm gaming, the community piece is most important to me. Like I like to engage with other people in that. So that became my initial focus. Now I had to even get deeper and look into like community is big. How do I identify community? How do I operationalize this? That was something that I put in a lot of folks' discussion board prompts. Think about the variables. So like community for me, I don't know how to measure community or a sense of community. So instead, what I did was I decided that I don't know enough about the gaming community. I need to figure out what are things that I can look at that help me to conceptualize what this community actually looks like from a mental health standpoint. And so I picked out measures of personality, coping methods, and resiliency because those initially I just did the first two. I just looked at motivation for play and personality type associated with that and coping strategies because I think those are, so motivation, why do people get into doing this activity, what draws them in? And then from a counselor's perspective, I'm curious about how do they deal with life stressors. One of my professors who was looking at this came back and said, well, we need to figure out how you're going to know if their coping methods or their personality type are useful to them. And so we brought in the resiliency variable. So it's a process. One of my former professors used to talk about it's an iterative process. You just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper, bringing that funnel. It's like an upside down pyramid, bringing that funnel closer and closer down to this issue. You do the study, you dig into it, you're going to find a dozen more variables that you want to cover. So you just note them and try to figure out what fits, what doesn't fit, and where do you go from here. No one study is going to be your complete gift to the profession. Each study should lead to a next study, in my opinion. So I think, in short, that's how you draw things down. It's really like look at the big picture, decide what is this global thing I want to look at, and then bring it down to an area of focus that is most important to you now. And then how am I going to measure this? Like, how am I going to know that I've learned about this thing? And see if that leads you down any other directions too. And then the follow-up question for this was, what do you do when your exact topic of interest has already been written about? Is it all right if your article has the same topic as another, as long as you're adding some kind of novel contribution that wasn't included in the original? I feel like good idea. Search it and it's already been written about in a professional journal. Yeah. So a couple things. One thing is, um, if it's already been written about, someone else wrote that. And so your perspective on it is going to be different. So there's no problem with duplicating a study, coming at it from a slightly different perspective, covering the same variables, but doing it in your own way. Your writing is still legit and worthy, and you just need to figure out your angle on it. There can be dozens and dozens of studies about the same topics, but they'll all say something slightly different, and that's important to the literature. So you don't have to change it just because you've already found something that's kind of a good match for you. The other end of this is is it all right if you pull in your study is different, but you can't find any supporting literature for your literature review or to back this? That's okay. I could talk about, like, if I talked about substance abuse treatment and I wanted to talk about uh, um, microdosing is one of the topics that's come up a lot recently, but I can't find a ton of literature on specifically microdosing in a population that I want to work with. Well, I can do two things. I can talk about microdosing in general, and I can talk about the population that I want to look at, and I can talk about other methods of coping that have come up or other methods of recovery that have come up that work with this population and other populations that have worked with microdosing, and that all just becomes part of your literature review. There is no such article that covers all of these topics. This is what I know about this and this and this and this and this, and that leads me to believe that this might be possible, and then we test it. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. You just want to find articles that are similar. So like maybe you want to look up an article on existential counseling, for example, and how that works with a particular population, but there is no such article on that. Well, you can draw in a bunch of literature from the existential theorists, and you can draw in a bunch of articles from the population and a bunch of articles on other theories that have worked with that population, and then you just have to make a valid and a clear argument. Like this is how I believe these things link, and it leads me to this conclusion. So you should be able to look at that, and someone shouldn't be left with, I don't know how this connects. Like, connect it for them and then test it. That's what research is about. Hopefully, I approach both of those topics appropriately. Certainly, reach out to me by email or in the Discord server if I missed something or you need something more about digging into the literature. I'd love to talk about it more, but I don't want to talk down a corner that's not helpful for folks. I have another topic area I want to cover next, but at the same time, I can continue to talk about this with some specifics. Take care, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.